Hey, 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 pre-AP. Let's talk about some fungi. Alright, so fungi. Make sure, before we start, that you have your outline, some writing utensil, and a highlighter. That way you can follow along. If you don't have those things, just watch the video again, or pause, and write what you need to. So the big thing we want to focus on with fungi is just make you a note that most fungi are decomposers. Doodle, it went away. Let's rewrite that and probably write it better anyway. Decomposers. Which, remember, all that means is that we eat dead matter. This could be plant matter, animal matter. They consume and obtain their energy, their nutrients, through eating some type of dead matter. Now, some can be parasites, but for the most part, they just eat on dead matter. There are very few that just don't. We might talk about those. So, for the most part, we're going to see, like in this picture, you have some mushrooms. Those are decomposers. They're fungi. And they are living on and decomposing this tree that's fallen. You can't see it because it's got all kinds of stuff growing on it. But it's helping break down that dead tree. We also need to know and highlight that fungi are heterotrophs because they absorb by absorbing using exoenzymes. What they do is they send out enzymes onto whatever, something that they want to eat, and it starts to break it down for them, kind of like their own little stomach acid, and then they ingest what they have kind of broken down and disintegrated. The big thing we want to know is what they're composed of. They have cell walls, just like plants and bacteria, but their cell walls are made out of a much different sugar than plants and bacteria. Remember, bacteria had a thick cell wall or a thin cell wall made of peptoglycan sugar. Plants are composed in their cell wall of cellulose sugar. These are all complex sugars, but their formula has been changed just slightly, so they're called a different sugar. We need to make sure we highlight that their cell walls are made of chitin sugar. Ooh, remember, chitin is also that sugar that helps bugs be crunchy when you step on them. So if you've ever kicked a mushroom in your yard, you've heard it kind of snap a little bit, or you hear it go, that means that you've broken the cell wall made of chitin. Please highlight, remember, plant cell walls are composed of cellulose. That way, you will make sure you keep those straight in your mind. We need to know that most fungi have a symbiotic relationship with plant roots. They love to recycle nutrients for plants. Now, we're not to that part yet. We need to know that fungi help to increase the surface area of water uptake for roots. So we need that for sure, so plants can make more sugar. And we need to know that some are endomycorrhizae, which means that fungi enter through the root cells of the plant, or your ecto. Make sure that you underline endo and remind yourself that this is inside. You move inside. If you are ecto, underline it. Remember, this means outside. If you're ectomycorrhizae, that means that you cover the surface of the root of the plant. You don't move into the root. So this one goes inside the roots of a plant. This one actually travels up. This one draws some roots. This one just stays on the surface outside. Just hangs out outside. Alright, so to the structure, the parts, the composition of fungi. They're made of these little bitty tubular filaments called hyphae. So, if we want to talk about those lovely bacteria, Fungi kind of looks like bacteria, but it's not. It's fungi. They cover the root of a plant. That's the very end, and it looks like little worms crawling all over it. It's not. It's fungi. So fungi structure, if we look at this, this is a mushroom because mushrooms are fungi. They're made of these teeny tiny little tubes called hyphae. That's just the name of their tissue. It's called hyphae. And if you put a whole bunch of hyphae together, you form this structure called mycelium. So out beside mycelium, just put yourself an arrow and put a whole bunch of hyphae put together. That's all that is. Bunch of hyphae put together. Like whenever you put a bunch of cells together, you get a tissue. You get a bunch of tissue together, you make an organ. A bunch of organs make an organ system. Here, a bunch of hyphae put together makes a mycelium, a really thick tissue fungus body. And then the mycelium extend above and below the ground. So this is mycelium up here. This is mycelium. This is mycelium. All of that is mycelium. And fungi can grow really, really quickly. If you notice, it's been raining a lot lately. Whenever it stops raining, if it's warm enough, you're going to see mushrooms pop up out of the ground everywhere. They grow overnight. They are fast growers. Because if they grow really fast, this reduces the competition from other things for food. But if you've ever noticed, make sure you highlight, they need a lot of moisture to grow. Just like right now, we're getting a lot of moisture for them, and they're going to grow like crazy. So classification of fungus. We need to know that most fungus are classified according to how they reproduce, or their sexual reproduction structure. Not all things reproduce the same if you are a fungi. And there are 6 major phylums we're going to talk about. So here they are. We're going to talk about please do not, hassle me about how I pronounce these, because I'm not very good at them. They're a little tricky to pronounce, but we're going to try our best. There is, oh boy, I'm just going to call it Crotridamycota, and then we have Zygomycota, Acetomycota, and Bucetomycota. So, this is how we're going to look at them, how they reproduce. This is what tells you what type of fungus is which. Cryptomycota up here, they produce, so let's highlight these. They have a sexual reproductive structure called caryatids, which means if you want to draw this out here, they have motile spores, which means they move around and they have flagella. If you're Zygomycota, you have this stuff called zygosporogenum, or sporogium, which means you look like these. If you are Acetomycota, you have just sexual spores that are born internally, and then later on they burst out into the air and are spread everywhere. Or you're Bucetomycota, you're a mushroom, and you have a club shaped, or kind of like this cone shape, that's what that top of the mushroom is, which is full of reproductive cells called spores. So, boy, that's a lot of mycotas. Alright, so let's get some examples out here, because right now you're just going, everything just ends in mycota, Miss Minor. I don't know any of this. So go back to the top. Go to Crotridamycota. These are the examples we're going to write down. The examples for this guy. They actually caused a disease in a species of frog. They caused disease in frog. They were a parasite. These guys are actually one of those that are They were actually a parasite. They went in and they entered the bodies of frogs that were not dead or decaying. So this is one of those weird ones where it's not a decomposer. They went in and they caused a big, massive disease spread in frogs, and that species of frog became extinct. I don't remember the species of frog. If you want to look it up and tell me tomorrow, that'd be awesome. Zygomycota. The thing that it's most famous for is, write these two down. Black bread mold. So if you've ever looked in the cabinet, you were going to go make a sandwich and you see this fuzzy blackish green stuff and you think, oh, can I eat me a sandwich? That's why you had fungus growing on your sandwich. You don't want to eat that. Or it's green bread mold. Green bread mold is just the same type of fungus. It's just not blackish green. It's just bright, really, I guess you could say pretty green. If you are Conglomeromycetes or Conglomeromycota in that phylum, your example for that one is going to be, we like these a lot because they help plant roots get nutrients. So they're not bad. They don't cause disease. They don't cause any food spoilage. These guys, they just help out with plant roots, getting some nutrients. So they're a helper, not a herder. Acetamycota. These are the ones that I really want to talk about right here. Your example for this. If you ever have heard of people eating truffles before, like they put truffle oil on food, or you see it on the Food Network when they talk about truffles. Truffles are fungus. So in other countries they call them morels. These are very expensive. These only occur in nature. And in Europe and a lot of European countries, they have little bitty piggies that are trained to be able to sniff out truffles in the ground. And truffles are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars per ounce. So these guys over here that I've circled, they're probably worth a whole ton of money. So Acetamycota, think about truffles. If you ever ask anyone what truffles taste like, they'll tell you, well, they're kind of earthy tasting. Pretty much they taste like dirt. So if you want to eat dirt on your food, you know, I've heard some people say, oh, you know, they're kind of musty tasting. Well, I don't want to eat must, and I'd rather not eat dirt either, so I'm good. No thank you, I say. Acetamycota, this is probably the most common you're familiar with. The examples are going to be mushrooms. These are shiitake mushrooms, portobello, the mushrooms you see in your yard. All that lovely stuff. They have a nice dome top, which is their reproductive structure, and then they have a nice little mycelium that connects it to the ground. Some have polka dots, like the ones on Mario. Others have these pretty little wavy lines like a tree, and then some over here, that guy's, he's not the most attractive looking, but he's still a mushroom. And if you ever look out in your yard and you see a very large circle of mushrooms, that's actually called a fairy ring. If you've ever heard anyone mention the term fairy ring, this is where they got it from. They actually thought for a long time, there was this little story that went along with it, that fairies came and planted all these mushrooms in a circle. No, they just all popped up in a circle magically in someone's yard. It's just a bunch of fungus. And then here are the gills. They actually look like gills of fish. If you flip a mushroom upside down, do it sometime. If you get some from the grocery store before you cut them up or cook them, you can actually look. These are like little bitty ridges underneath, and you can feel them. They're just little bitty ridges. They actually call these the gills. And those are the reproductive structures. Alright, and then Deuteromycota, just know that your Example is going to be yeast. Yeast that you find in bread. Yeast makes bread taste good. It makes it rise and nice and fluffy. So yeast rolls. Thank you, fungus. Alright, so ecological impacts of fungus. We need to know that they, of course, they're important decomposers. We love them because they also highlight they recycle vital nutrients back into the environment. If we didn't have fungus, we would have nothing to break down the dead decaying matter in our world, and we'd just have dead plants and animals everywhere. And it would smell, and they would invade us. Oh, it would be terrible. Please also highlight that some fungi are pathogens. They cause disease. Most of the time, it's going to be in plants. So these are things like wheat rust. If you ever heard of a smut or a rust, then that is a plant fungal disease. Most of the time, fungus loves to go after plants because they're easier to attack. It's very hard for people, humans, or other animals to get a fungus infection. Like if you've ever seen on TV those commercials for toenail fungus or athlete's foot, things like that. That means that you have to kind of have a weakened immune system to get anything like that. So don't worry too much. And then, like it says on the next bullet, highlight that some are human pathogens. If you've ever heard of ringworm, athlete's foot, jock itch, yeast infections, dandruff. Dandruff is a fungus disease on your scalp that causes your skin to dry out on your scalp and then your skin to kind of flake. And then, of course, highlight some fungus are used for medicines and food. They do. A very famous fungus, if you want to put this out there, ringworm, ew. Athlete's foot, it's terrible. We'll go back to the ringworm. It's not as bad, actually. Let's just go back to the chestnut blot. It's not as horrible to look at. Medicines and food, make yourself an example. This is penicillin. This is where we got penicillin from. Oh, doodle. I pressed the wrong arrow. So just make yourself the out beside medicine. Penicillin. The wonder drug, as most people called it. Penicillin. We got a really great antibiotic out of this. So, that's fungus. That's it. That's all you got to know for tomorrow. And I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Hope it was helpful.